United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for all troops to be withdrawn from around Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station. The plant has come under repeated shelling. Guterres was speaking during talks with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and the Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the city of Lviv in western Ukraine. The leaders also discussed exchanging prisoners of war and increasing Ukrainian grain exports. Millions of tons of wheat and maize are still stuck in Black Sea ports. Guterres repeated calls for a safe zone around Zaporizhzhia.
Military equipment and personnel should be withdrawn from the plant. Further deployment of forces or equipment to the site must be avoided. The area needs to be demilitarized. And we must tell it as it is. Any potential damage to Zaporizhzhia is suicide.
And Ukraine says it has obtained new troubling intelligence about a Russian plot involving the nuclear power plant. DW's correspondent Matthias Böllinger in Lviv has more.
Yeah, Russia seems to have announced a free day tomorrow, asking only the crews that will be on duty, that will really run the operations at the power plant, to come to work, and all the other stuff not. And that is, of course, something that worries Ukraine. Of course, these informations have not been confirmed by the Russian side. It's exclusively Ukrainian intelligence information. There has been an announcement by Russia, however, that they are accusing Ukraine of planning to do something, a provocation, as they call it, there tomorrow. So it seems that tomorrow is going to be a critical day in this power plant that has been under pressure for quite some time, being shelled from different sides. We don't know exactly from where, and we also heard that the situation inside the plant is quite dire, with high pressure on the staff there, and a lot of military equipment stored near or even inside the facility. We don't know this exactly, but the situation is tense, yes.
Both Erdogan and Guterres have stressed that there is positive momentum for diplomatic efforts after that grain deal was achieved a couple of weeks back. Is that optimism shared by President Zelenskyy?
It depends on what we are talking about. There are quite a few things that diplomats can do at this stage. One thing is to try to resolve the situation around the power plant. Another thing is exchanges of prisoners, and also all of them have said today that they want to speed up the grain exports to get more ships in and out of Ukrainian ports. That, of course, requires work with all sides. So there is, of course, a role for diplomacy to play at this stage. But the question is this going towards a diplomatic solution of the conflict, as Erdogan has suggested? And that's clearly not what is happening at the moment.
Matthias Böllinger with the latest from Lviv in western Ukraine. Thanks. Now, the Turkish president seems confident that he can change the course of the war. I asked our correspondent Dorian Jones in Istanbul how Erdogan might try to get the two sides to the negotiating table.
Well, I think he sees his current grain deal, which Turkey helped to broker along with the United Nations between Ukraine and Russia, as the vehicle that could ultimately take these two warring parties to a negotiation table. Now, basically, Turkey is very buoyed by the fact that already 25 ships have passed, thanks to this Ukraine deal, to the world markets, carrying around 500,000 tons of grain. Now, that is seen by Turkey as evidence that these two warring parties can at least work together on this deal. Now, Erdogan sees the first step will be to build on the success of this deal, slowly building some kind of trust between the two sides, which would be ultimately key in any negotiation. Now, Erdogan, I think, is focusing at least on resolving the current crisis over this nuclear power station. Possibly, if some deal can be brokered there, this will be further momentum that ultimately could bring the sides to the negotiating table, along with talks of prisoner swaps, which Erdogan is also believed to have discussed during his meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who he has met twice in the last month. And this is another reason why Erdogan does feel in some ways confident that Turkey in many ways is the best placed partner to facilitate a deal when the two sides are ready to talk.
What does Erdogan himself hope to gain from positioning himself at the center of these diplomatic efforts?
Well, Turkey really is a neighbor with Ukraine and Russia and has close ties with both sides, has been really affected very badly by this conflict, certainly on an economic level. It's been hit by soaring food prices along with the rest of the world. So Erdogan is very keen to somehow bring an end to this conflict and bring some stability to the region. But beyond that, I think Erdogan sees an opportunity again to play the world-leading figure. He sees himself as really the only man that can ultimately bring the sides together, given the fact he does have close ties with the Ukrainian and the Russian presidents, and he sees this as an opportunity, again, of putting himself on the world stage, which he knows he believes will play well with supporters in Turkey, and also the fact that he is facing re-election next year. And also he will see as a chance that if he's successful in bringing some kind of peace, this will also silence, he believes, criticism of Turkey's close ties to Putin, which Turkey has faced growing criticism from its Western allies, especially as Turkey is not enforcing Western sanctions against Russia.
Many factors at play there. Dorian Jones in Istanbul, thank you. And I'm now pleased to welcome Alexander Scherba. He's a former ambassador to Austria from Ukraine. He's also the author of Ukraine versus Darkness, a collection of essays based on the 2.5 decades he spent as a career diplomat and speechwriter for Ukrainian leaders. Mr. Scherba, so good to see you. I want to begin by asking you, Recep Tayyip Erdogan says he thinks a lasting peace can evolve from the grain deal. Do you share that optimism?
Well, it can be just the beginning of the path to the lasting peace, but the real chance for the lasting peace would be the moment when we start pushing Putin back from our territory. That would be the moment when Putin feels he's losing this war, and that would be the moment when he decides to really give diplomacy a chance. Because until now, whatever conversations about diplomacy and peaceful solution that came from Moscow, from this genocidal maniac in the Kremlin, it was all just a show. He didn't mean anything by it.
So when Erdogan now comes face-to-face for the first time with the Ukrainian president, saying that he supports Ukraine in the fight, does that mean that they are a trustworthy ally to bring that message to Putin, you think?
Well, it just so happened that Erdogan is right now the main negotiator between Ukraine and Russia. If there is any chance of, bringing any kind of helpful signals from one side to another, it's via Ankara, it's via Turkey, and we are thankful for that. We are thankful for the weapons that Turkey supplies to us to fight Russia. But again, as a former diplomat, I have to say right now, I don't see much chance for any kind of diplomatic solution. Just yesterday, Russia destroyed with an extremely expensive missile rocket, Iskander, a dormitory in Kharkiv, where people with hearing impairment lived. So 17 people died, many are wounded. It's genocide. People were hit without even hearing that something was coming their way. And this is what's happening every day. He just mined and booby-trapped Europe's biggest atomic nuclear power plant. So this is what we're dealing here with. It's a maniac who feels like the world isn't ready to give him any, red lines. And
does it make any sense to even attempt diplomacy with what you call a maniac?
At some point, when the maniac realizes that he is losing, and losing maybe everything, then it would be a chance that the remains of his common sense would play a role. But right now, he is just this bloodthirsty creature, killing thousands in Ukraine, deporting thousands, making millions homeless. And there is no end in sight with what he's doing. Right now, as we are speaking, there is once again an air raid siren in Ukraine. This is our reality every day. This is like 81 years ago when the Nazis attacked Soviet Union. He's doing all the same things: mass killings, deportations. So it's the history once again, reliving the history.
Now, Erdogan was certainly hoping to not leave Lviv today empty-handed, but he sort of did, right? Because he was certainly rebuffed by Zelenskyy, saying that, you know, if you want to talk, you first need to leave Ukrainian territory. Were you at all bothered by the fact that, you know, Erdogan came to Ukraine to tell the president that it needs to negotiate with Russia, because the president certainly wasn't buying it either?
Well, this is what Erdogan has been doing all along, and we aren't disappointed, we aren't encouraged. It's just Erdogan doing his thing. Maybe there is some sense to it, but at this point right now, I don't see much a chance of this talk of a diplomatic solution, of a compromise with a bloodthirsty maniac who conducts genocide right now as we speak. So it's just, I'm not very optimistic. I wasn't very optimistic before this meeting. I'm not very optimistic after it, but I'm very optimistic that now as we speak, there are 3 big ammunition depots in Russia and in occupied Crimea that are burning. Ukraine is doing her thing. We are destroying the armed forces of the Russian Federation.
And I want to switch topics a bit. There is a controversial debate going on in many EU countries, and I would love to hear your opinion on it. Should there be a visa ban for Russian citizens?
Yes, as a Ukrainian, I say yes, because my family lives in Vienna. So many Ukrainian refugees live in Vienna, and they're just struggling every day despite all the help that they're getting from the West, and they're seeing these big, numerous groups of Russian tourists just strolling through downtown, enjoying their life like nothing happened. And
what about dissidents, though? People trying to leave Russia because they face oppression in their own country?
I hope we can draw a line between dissidents and tourists, because indeed we must do it in a way that dissidents don't suffer, that people who are dying and seeking medical help don't suffer. But just doing the tourist thing as if nothing was happening is wrong.
You talked about Zaporizhzhia before, alleging that Putin or his troops were booby-trapping the nuclear plant, and the Ukrainian intelligence services have been warning of Russian activity there. What do you believe they are plotting? Guterres, the UN Secretary-General, said any damage to the plant would equal to suicide.
I think Russians are doing what Putin likes the best. They are raising the stakes of the game. They enjoy every minute of this fear that the world is feeling, that Europe is feeling. It comes from, the Soviet time, when the world was fearful of Soviet Union. Now they fear us again. So they respect us. This is the Russian thinking right now. So they are raising the stakes, but I do hope that they have this modicum of, common sense not to do this crazy, insane thing from which Russia can suffer immensely too.
And you're not alone in that. Alexander Sherba, thank you for your time.
Thank you.